Solving and graphing inequalities. We have 4 problems to do. I'm going to do them both with the dot notation and with the bracket and bracket and parentheses notation. So first thing we have to do is solve this, because when I look at this, I see that on one side of my inequality sign, I have numbers and letters, and I don't want to have both letters and numbers. So first I need to solve this. So I have my x plus 4 is less than or equal to 1. And just like if we had an equal sign there, I'm going to subtract that 4 over to the other side. So minus 4. So now I have x is less than or equal to negative 3. And that is what I need to graph. So I have my number line. I find my 0. I find my negative 3. X is less than that, so I have to check to see which direction do I want to go. Do I want to go left or do I want to go right? So I check. 0 is less than or equal to negative 3. That is false. So I go away from 0. Next thing I need to know is, do I want to use my dots open or closed? It has an equal to part on it. From the very beginning, I see that equal to part on it. So if I use dots, I have to put in a closed dot. If I use parentheses versus brackets, I have my 0, I have my negative 3. I will put in my square bracket and my line going to infinity. The other thing that I need to do with this is write it in interval notation. So my interval notation, it goes from negative infinity. Infinity always gets the round parentheses, up to negative 3. And we see here that it does get the squared off bracket. So there's my answer. Next problem. 3 minus 7x is greater than or equal to 10 minus 8x. So solving it, 3 minus 7x is greater than or equal to 10 minus 8x. I want to first get my letters all on the same side of the inequality. And I have a personal preference to have a positive coefficient. So my personal preference is I am going to add the 8x over. And now, after having done that, I have 3 plus x is greater than or equal to 10. This is a lot easier looking with the plus sign there. Get rid of my 3. You could have done that in the same step. And now I have x is greater than or equal to 7. And this is what I need to graph. So I have my number line. I have my 0. And I have my 7. I need to figure out, do I go to the left or do I go to the right? So I have to compare this to something. Some of you can do this in your head without any problem. Good. Others need to actually compare it to something. So I'm asking myself, 0, is that greater than or equal to 7? 0 is not greater than 7, so I'm going to go away from 0. Next thing I need to figure out is, With my circles, do I want it open or closed? My dots, it has the equal to part on it, so it's going to be a closed dot. And then from there, I can make my inequality, or I already have my inequality notation. I need my interval notation. So my interval notation will be square, 7, comma, infinity, round, parentheses. And that is what your homework is asking you to do. That is what you will be asked to do on a quiz or test. And then the other way of doing this is the parentheses versus bracket. We have our 7. We have 0. And we know that it goes out in that direction. We know that it does have the equal to part on it, so it should be square here. And that is done. So you have your choice of whether you use the dots or the brackets and parentheses in my class. Your teacher, if you're not in my class, your teacher will tell you which one to use. Now, with this one, there was another way that I could have done it. It would end up the same. So I'm going to leave that work there. And I'm going to do this another way. We still have the same 3 minus 7x is greater than or equal to 10 minus 8x. But this way, I'm going to add my 7x over. So now I have 3 is greater than or equal to 10 minus 1x. Move my 10 over. Now I have negative 7 is greater than or equal to negative 1x. I still have this negative sign over here. I need to get rid of the negative sign. But when I multiply or divide by a negative sign, I have to flip my inequality around. So I'm dividing out the negative 1, dividing out negative 1, and then this gets flipped. So I have negative divide negative is positive, 7. Flip my sign, and then I have my x. So 7 is less than or equal to x. And then I have to take that down to my graph, and it will be the same graph. So this way, where I have my negative coefficient of x, because of that negative coefficient, it takes an extra step after I get down to the bottom of the problem. Third question. Negative 5x is less than 20. There's only one step here to be done in order to solve this, and that is divide out the negative 5. But because I have that negative in there, that means that this gets flipped. So that is going to be greater than now. I have my x, because the negative 5 cancels negative 5. That gets flipped. Positive divide negative is negative. 20 divide 5 is 4. And then I have to graph that. So I find my 0, I find my negative 4, and I have to decide, does it go to the right or does it go to the left? Take a number, any number. I like to use 0 is greater than negative 4, and I'm asking that. Is that a true statement? 0 is greater than negative 4? True. So that means that I go in the direction of 0. If it were false, I would go away from 0. I need to figure out, do I want the open or closed dot? Well, for that, do I have an equal to sign on there? No. and it's the open dot. I need to write it in interval notation. So that it's going to be the round parentheses, -4, comma, last time I see it, it is an arrow, so that's telling me that it's going to infinity. It's a one-sided inequality. Infinity always gets the round parentheses. If you prefer, instead of using dots, in my class you are allowed to use the parentheses and brackets. So we have our -4, we have 0, we see it does not have the equal to sign on it, so that is going to be squared off there, and it's going to continue out that direction. Does not have the, I made a mistake, that should not be square there, that should be round, because it is not equal. So that should be a round parentheses, because it does not have the equal sign there. Last problem in this set. -y is greater than or equal to 0. Remember, you are allowed to multiply anything times 1, and it does not change the problem. So I can multiply a 1 in there, and that does not change my problem. Now I can divide out that -1. Divide out the -1. But because I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip the sign. Divide by negative, flip inequality. So now I have y, instead of being greater than or equal to, going to be less than or equal to. 0 divided by -1, 0 divided by anything is still 0. So now I get to graph that. I have my number line, I have 0, and this one I can't compare to 0 to tell me which direction to go because 0 is my starting point. So I have to compare it to something else. So I'm going to try 1. 1, is that less than or equal to 0? So I'm looking at 1 here. The answer for this, 1 is not, so that's false. So that tells me I have to go away from 1. So I go in that direction. Next, I have to figure out open or closed dot. It has the equal to sign on it. That does not change. The equal to sign does not change when you flip it because of dividing by the negative. So because it has the equal to sign, we fill in the dot. If you were doing this with parentheses and brackets, you have 0. You know that it's going to go away from 1, same reasoning, and then we have to figure out, is it going to be square or is it going to be round? It has the equal to sign on it, so it will be square. And then we have to write this in interval notation. So it's a one-sided inequality. One of the sides is going to be infinity, and we see the arrow, so that's telling me that my negative infinity is one side. Infinity always gets the parentheses, always gets round. It goes up to 0, and we decided that it stops at 0 with the square bracket. So this problem is now done.